What do you mean by wit? Dear departed means someone who is very close to us has gone away. That is, and Victoria says, what are they coming for? They haven't been here for ages. What she says is, as soon as Abel is dead, she wanted to have the burial. Hello friends. Today let's see the unit 2 of the 10th standard English textbook. Okay, the unit 2, the theme of this unit is wit and humor. What do you mean by wit? Wit means something which causes laughter because of intelligence. Very intelligent things make us laugh. To make someone laugh is the toughest task. Okay, so wit and humor means it needs a lot of knowledge, lot of timing sense to make someone laugh. That is wit and humor. Okay, so here you have the picture reading wherein you see a rat and a cat. Here the rat is showing the gun to the cat. Let's see what the questions here are. What do you understand from the picture? So this is a reverse order. This never happens in our day-to-day life. This is very strange. So it causes a little bit of comedy. Can you recall anything comic associated with these animals? Yes, of course. We can recollect the Tom and Jerry, right? Can you imagine what may be the conversation between the rat and the cat? So conversation, maybe the rat is telling, hey cat, I will shoot you. Maybe the cat is telling, no, don't shoot me. Yeah, so this may be the possible conversation. How do people differ in enjoying humor? Young and old, rural and urban, literates and illiterates. So naturally, as people have different tastes, the type of comedy scenes or the type of humor they enjoy is definitely different. Okay, so we need to just analyze, just ask the people around us, the young, old. Generally young people like the stand-up comedies or comic scenes from the movies, yeah, and or prank videos also they enjoy. Old people, they have a different taste. Rural means people in the village. Urban means people in the cities. Yeah, city people and village people also have a different taste. Literates means educated people. Illiterates means uneducated people. Everyone has a different taste. So we have to make a note. Just gather information about it and answer this question. Okay, now let's go into the lesson. This lesson, that is the dear departed. Dear means someone who is very close to us is called dear. Departed means went away. Dear departed means someone who is very close to us has gone away. That is dear departed. Okay, this lesson is in the form of a skit. Generally in the skit or a play, what they do is firstly they write the characters who are the people acting in the skit. Okay, so here we have the characters. First is Amelia Slater and Elizabeth Jordan. They both are sisters. Okay, and Henry Slater. Henry Slater is the husband of Amelia Slater. Ben Jordan is the husband of Elizabeth Jordan, right? And Victoria Slater is Amelia's daughter. And Abel Merriweather is Amelia's and Elizabeth's father. So Abel Merriweather is the father. He has two daughters. One is Amelia, another one is Elizabeth. Amelia is married to Henry Slater and she has a girl, that is Victoria. Elizabeth is married to Ben Jordan. Okay, so these are the people in the story. Okay, firstly I would just tell you the background. What has happened actually in this story is Abel Merriweather took some tablets. He had some headache, so he took some tablets and he was fast asleep. Generally when we take the tablets, we get a lot of sleep, deep sleep. This Abel Merriweather also was in deep sleep, and that time this Amelia saw him and thought that he was dead. Okay, she mistook him to be dead. So this is where the story starts. She has mistaken him to be dead, and then she is calling her sister. Who is her sister? Yes, it is Elizabeth Jordan. She has called her sister, and the sister is going to come, right? So this is what the story is starting with. Okay, right. Now when the curtain rises, Mrs. Slater is seen laying the table. She is putting the tablecloth on the table. She is a vigorous, plump, red-faced, vulgar woman prepared to do any amount of straight talking to get her own way. So this Amelia Slater is a very dominating character. If she wants something to be done, she will get it done at any cost. By any means, she will get that thing done. That is the character of Amelia Slater. Okay, she is in black. Why is she in black? Generally, in the foreign countries, when someone dies, they wear the black dress to show the sadness. That is called as mourning. Okay, so she is in black dress. She goes to the window, opens it, and calls into the street. Mrs. Slater says, "Victoria, Victoria, do you hear? Come in, will you?" That is, this Victoria is a very intelligent girl. She is playing outside the house, and Amelia is calling Victoria. Mrs. Slater means Amelia. Amelia Slater is calling Victoria inside. Okay, Mrs. Slater says, "I am amazed at you, Victoria. I really am. Be off now and change your dress before your Aunt Elizabeth and your Uncle Ben come. It would never do for them to find you in colors with grandfather lying dead upstairs." So she is asking Victoria to change her dress to black color dress because this Elizabeth and Ben are coming. That is, Victoria's uncle and aunt are coming. If they see Victoria in color dress, they would speak bad about Mrs. Slater. They would say that Mrs. Slater has no sadness about Abel's death. Okay, so she wants Victoria to change the dress to black color. And Victoria says, "What are they coming for? They haven't been here for ages. They haven't come to our house for many years," she says. That means what happened actually is this Mrs. Slater and Mrs. Jordan, that is Amelia and Elizabeth Jordan, had a big quarrel. They both fought with each other, and this Elizabeth Jordan did not come to Amelia Slater's house for a long time. For many years she didn't come. So this Victoria is very shocked. Why ever would Elizabeth come to her house? Why is auntie coming now all of a sudden? She is asking. Then Mrs. Slater says, "They are coming to talk over poor grandpa's affairs. Your father sent them a telegram as soon as we found he was dead." So she says, as our grandpa is dead, they are coming here to speak over his property. As your grandpa is dead, they are coming over here to speak over whatever his property is and to speak over the things connected with grandpa, she says. Then Henry Slater, a stooping young man, a heavy man with a drooping moustache, enters. He is wearing a black tailcoat, that is, Henry is already in black color dress, grey trousers, a black tie and a bowler hat. So this is the dressing of Henry Slater. Okay, Henry, I am wondering if they will come at all. When you and Elizabeth quarreled, she said she would never set foot in your house again. He says that he doesn't think Elizabeth would ever come because the way you both fought. Who both? Amelia Slater and Elizabeth Jordan, the way they fought, it was so huge. Such a big fight it was that he didn't think Elizabeth would ever come to their house. Then what Mrs. Slater says, "She'll come fast enough after her share of what our fathers left. You know how hard she can be when she likes. Where she gets it from, I can't tell." She says that Elizabeth would definitely come because it is a matter of property. As Abel is dead, his property would be divided, half to Amelia Slater and half to Elizabeth Jordan. So as she will get the property, she will definitely come, says Amelia Slater. And then Henry says, "I suppose it's in the family." Then he says, "Where are my slippers?" So Henry is asking for his slippers. Then Mrs. Slater says, "In the kitchen." "But you want a new pair. Those old ones are nearly worn out. You don't seem to realize what it's costing me to bear up like I am doing. My heart's fit to break when I see the little trifles that belong to father lying around and think he'll never use them again. Here you would better wear these slippers of my father's now. It's lucky he had just got a new pair. So what she is doing is, actually Abel had bought a new pair of slippers and it is in the kitchen. Okay, so what she says is, she is asking this Henry to wear the new slippers of Abel, because Abel is already dead. She thinks that he is dead. He is not going to use the slippers anymore. So she is telling that Henry should wear the slippers. Then Henry says, they'll be very small for me, my dear. Then what Mrs. Slater says is, they'll stretch, won't they? I am not going to have them wasted. Henry, I have been thinking about that bureau. Bureau means a small table. Bureau of my father's that's in his bedroom. This is the picture. Here you can see the picture of the bureau. It's a table with a good design. That's called a bureau. Okay, what here Amelia Slater says is, she has an eye on the bureau. Okay, you know, I always wanted to have it after he died. So what she says is, as soon as Abel is dead, she wanted to have the bureau. Then Henry says, you must arrange with Elizabeth when you are dividing things up. Then he says, okay, if you like it, you can have it. But first, speak with your sister, because you both have to share the property. So speak with your sister and then you can take the bureau, he says. Then Mrs. Slater says, Elizabeth, that's sharp. She'll see I am after it and will drive a hard bargain over it. So she says that if she knows that I like that bureau, she will also ask for the bureau. So I am not going to do it, she says. Then Henry says, perhaps she has got her eye on the bureau as well. So he says, maybe she too wants the bureau before you know. And he says, then Mrs. Slater says, she's never been here since father bought it. If it was only down here instead of in his room, she would never guess it wasn't our own. Now look children, this is printing mistake here. You can see the first line. Mrs. Slater, she's got her eye on the bureau as well. This is a printing mistake. So ignore those two lines. Okay. So after Henry says that she too may be liking it, then Mrs. Slater says that no, it is not possible, because she did not come here for a long time. In this gap only Abel had bought the bureau, so she doesn't know about the bureau. She doesn't know completely about the bureau. If we bring that bureau and keep in our room, she will think that it is our bureau, she says. Then Henry, startled means shocked. Amelia, he says. And Mrs. Slater says, Henry, why shouldn't we bring that bureau down here now? We can do it before they come. So she says that we can bring the bureau here and keep it in our room, and when she comes, she would think that the bureau belongs to us, so no problems for us, we can take the bureau, she says. Okay. And Henry, I wouldn't care to. He doesn't like to get the things done like that. And Mrs. Slater says, don't look so daft. Why not? No, I told you in the beginning, Amelia Slater is such a person. If she wants something to be done, she will get it done at any cost. So here, if Henry accepts, doesn't accept, he is willing, not willing, she will make him do. The slippers, she did the same way. He wasn't willing to wear them, she made him wear. And now he is not willing to carry the bureau, she will make him carry. Okay. And Henry says, it doesn't seem delicate somehow. And she says, it's not so special. Why are you behind that bureau? He said. And Mrs. Slater says, we could put that shabby old chest of drawers upstairs where the bureau is now. Elizabeth could have that and welcome. I have always wanted to get rid of it. Now she is not at all listening to what he is saying. She is in her own way thinking how to get the bureau down. So she has another idea. She says that there are some old chest of drawers in her room and she always wanted to get rid of them. That was occupying place. Okay, so what she says is, we will put this waste chest of drawers upstairs, and in that place we will get the bureau, she says. Then Henry says, suppose they come when we are doing it. So he says, if Elizabeth comes when we are shifting the bureau down, she may think that we are stealing, he says. Then Mrs. Slater says, I'll fasten the front door. Get your coat off, Henry. We will change it. So Mrs. Slater says, don't worry, Henry. I have an idea for that also. I'll go and latch the door. If they come, they have to knock at the door. Once they knock at the door, we can get alert. So I will go and latch the door, she says. And meanwhile, she is asking Henry to remove the coat. Then only they can get the burial. For carrying, if the coat is there, it won't be suitable for them to carry. So she is asking him to remove the coat. Mrs. Slater goes out to fasten the front door. Henry takes his coat off. Mrs. Slater reappears. Then Mrs. Slater says, I'll run up and move the chairs out of the way. Again she goes upstairs to remove the chairs. There are some chairs on the way. They have to carry it from upstairs. Actually, Abel's Meriwether's room is in the first floor. And Amelia Slater is in the ground floor. Okay, so she is going upstairs to move the chairs from the way. Victoria appears dressed according to her mother's instructions. What is her mother's instructions? To wear the black dress. So Victoria is wearing the black dress and coming. Victoria says, what have you got your coat off for, father? And Victoria asks, Daddy, you were wearing the coat. What happened? Why did you remove the coat? Then Henry says, Mother and I are going to bring grandfather's bureau down here. He says he is going to bring the bureau downstairs. Then Victoria says, are you planning to pinch it? Now she is an intelligent girl. I told you already, she is an intelligent girl. So what happened is she found out that they are trying to do something wrong. Yeah, so she is asking, are you trying to pinch it? That means, are you trying to steal it, Daddy? She is asking. Then Henry says, no, my child, Grandpa gave it to your mother before he died. So Henry is trying to tell a lie to cover up the story. But what Victoria says, this morning? Then Henry says, yes. Then Victoria, he was drunk this morning. This Victoria is not ready to believe. She says he was in a drunken state, Daddy. How could he gift that bureau this morning? She is asking. She is not ready to believe. Mrs. Slater appears carrying a handsome clock under her arm. So as this conversation goes on, this Amelia Slater comes down. Then Mrs. Slater says, I thought I would fetch this down as well. She puts it on the mantelpiece. A clock's worth nothing and is always appealed to me. So while coming, she brought the clock also. You can see the picture of the clock here. While going and clearing the way, she went and brought the clock also. She says she liked the clock. That's why she brought it. Then Victoria says, that's Grandpa's clock. She says, that is Grandpa's clock. Why have you brought it? She asks. Then Mrs. Slater says, be quiet. It's ours now. Come, Henry, lift your end. So she says that the clock, now we have brought it. It's in our room. So this belongs to us. It is not Grandpa. Shut your mouth, Victoria, she says. And then Henry and Mrs. Slater, very hot and flushed, stagger in with a pretty old-fashioned bureau containing a log desk. They put it where the chest of drawers was and straighten the ornaments. There is a knock at the door. The knocking is repeated. Victoria ushers in Ben and Mrs. Jordan. The latter is a stout, complacent woman with an irritating air of being always right. So here, as this happened, after a while, they have shifted the bureau downstairs and kept the chest of drawers upstairs. That time, Ben and Elizabeth Jordan have arrived. What type of woman is Elizabeth Jordan? She is a very proud person. She thinks that what she says is only right. What others say is not right. What she says is always right. This is her attitude. She is wearing an outfit of new mourning. New mourning is black dress. She is wearing a new black dress. Maybe that is why she is so late in coming. Yeah, maybe she went for a shopping to buy the new black dress. Ben is also in complete new mourning. He is rather a jolly little man, but at present trying to adapt himself to the regrettable occasion. Actually, Ben Jordan is a very jolly type person, very jovial person, but now he can't crack jokes. Now this is, today is Abel Meriwether is dead. So at this moment, he cannot crack jokes. So he is trying to become a little bit sad. Okay. Mrs. Jordan sails into the room and solemnly goes straight to Mrs. Slater and kisses her. The men shake hands. So both the sisters greet each other, and the husband of Elizabeth and husband of Amelia, they too greet each other. Mrs. Jordan says, well, Amelia, and so he is gone at last. Then Mrs. Slater says, yes, he is gone. He was 72 a fortnight last Sunday. So she says he was 72 years old. And then Ben says, now Amelia, you mustn't give way. We have all got to die sometime or other. As Mrs. Slater is trying to cry, that is, she is acting to cry, Ben tries to console her. She is telling, don't worry, these all things happen, like that. Very dramatic scene happens there. And then Mrs. Jordan says, and now perhaps you will tell us all about it. So now Mrs. Jordan is asking about what all happened, how it happened like this, what happened before he died, all that she is asking. Then Mrs. Slater says, father had been merry this morning. He went out soon after breakfast to pay his insurance. Then Mrs. Jordan says, my word, it's a good thing. He always was thoughtful in that way. He was too honorable to have gone without paying his premium. So she says, Amelia Slater says that he was very happy this morning and he went out to pay the insurance. So Mrs. Jordan is very happy. You know what is insurance? Insurance means there is some big money, big amount, okay, maybe 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs, 25 lakhs, there is some money. For that is the insurance money. If someone dies, okay, they'll give this money. When will they give? That person should pay the premium. Okay, every year they should pay the premium, or there is some time period. For that they should pay the premium. If they pay the premium regularly and that person dies, one who is paying the premium, he will get the full money, maybe 25 lakhs, 50 lakhs, that money will come to him. Okay, that is what insurance is. So she says, nice thing, he paid the premium. Now as he has died, we will get the insurance, so we can share among ourselves. So she says he is a very nice person. Oh, yes, Abel Merriweather is a nice person, she says. Then Henry says, and when I came in, I found him undressed, sure enough, and snug in bed. Snug means sleep. And when I came, snug means sleep. And when I came, he was sleeping in the bed, he says, Henry says. Then Mrs. Slater says, and when we had finished our dinner, I thought I would take up a bit of something on a tray. He was lying there for all the world as if he was asleep. So I put the tray on the bureau, correcting herself, on the chest of drawers and went to waken him. So what she says is, after we had our supper, I brought the food for Abel Merriweather. Then I kept the food on the bureau. She says that is actually the truth. The bureau is upstairs, isn't it? And then she gets the conscious that, okay, if I tell bureau, she'll get a doubt. So immediately she says, no, not on the bureau. I kept it on the chest of drawers. She somehow manages to tell a lie. Okay, and then Mrs. Slater says, well, will you go up and look at him now, or shall we have tea? So what she is asking is, shall we have tea, or will you go and look at Abel Merriweather? Then Mrs. Jordan says, what do you say, Ben? Ben says, I am not particular. Then Mrs. Jordan says, well then, if the kettle's ready, we may as well have tea first. So Mrs. Jordan says that we will have tea first. Later on, I will go and see Abel Merriweather. Look how she is, okay. And then Mrs. Slater puts the kettle on the fire and gets tea ready. And Henry says, one thing we may as well decide now is the announcement in the papers. Announcement in the papers means in the newspapers, to give the announcement. Then Mrs. Jordan says, I was thinking of that. What would you put? So when someone dies, they give the announcement, such and such person is dead, he was so dear to us, he was so close to us, all that they write. So what to write, she is asking. Then Mrs. Jordan says, well, we'll think about it after tea, and then we'll look through his bits of things and make a list of them. There is all the furniture in his room. So she says, we'll make a list of all the things, whatever he has got, so that we can share it among ourselves. Then she says about the furniture. Then Henry says, there's no jewellery or valuables of that sort. He doesn't have any jewellery or anything, he says. Then Mrs. Jordan says, except his gold watch. He promised that to our Jimmy. Look at that. He has only one gold watch, it says, and that he promised to Jimmy. Now, can they go and wake up Abel and ask whether he promised to Jimmy or not? No, not at all, isn't it? So she says that he promised to Jimmy. So nicely, Jimmy means Ben Jordan's pet name. So nicely, very trickily, she is taking the gold watch. Okay, and Mrs. Slater says, promised you a Jimmy? I have never heard of that. Then Mrs. Jordan says, oh, but he did, Amelia. When he was living with us, he was very fond of Jimmy. So she is trying to prove herself correct. Yes, he gave it as a gift, she says. Then Mrs. Slater says, well, I don't know. She can't do anything. So she says, okay, maybe he gave. Then Ben says, anyhow, there is his insurance money. Have you got the receipt for the premium he paid this morning? So he says, why should we fight for that small watch? Let's see how much premium he has paid, how much insurance we have. Let's go and check the receipt. Then we will get an idea whether he paid the premium or not. Then Mrs. Slater says, I have not seen it. Then Victoria jumps up from the sofa and comes behind the table. Victoria says, Mother, I don't think Grandpa went to pay his insurance this morning. Look at this, Victoria. She says that Abel did not go to pay the premium. Okay. And Mrs. Slater says he went out. Then Victoria says, yes, but he didn't go into the town. He met old Mr. Tattersall down the street and they went off past St. Philip's Church. So she says, no, he didn't go towards the insurance office side. He didn't pay the premium. He went towards the church side. Okay, so I don't think he paid the premium, Victoria says. Then Ben says, do you think he hasn't paid it? Was it overdue? He asks. Then Mrs. Jordan says, something tells me he has not paid it. The drunken old beggar. Till now they were praising him. As soon as they got a hint that he didn't pay the premium of the insurance, they start scolding. Ben starts scolding him. Drunken old beggar. And Mrs. Jordan says, he's done it on purpose just to annoy us. Then annoy us means to make us angry. Okay, irritate us. Okay. And Mrs. Slater says, after all I have done for him, having to put up with him in the house these 3 years, it's nothing short of swindling. Then Mrs. Jordan says, I had to put up with him for 5 years. Then this Amelia Slater says, I took care of him all these 3 years, but he didn't give anything, not even paying the premium. She started scolding. And Mrs. Jordan also telling, oh no, I took care of him for 5 years, no use. He didn't keep any savings for us, she is telling. And then Mrs. Slater says, and you were trying to turn him over to us all the time. So Amelia Slater says, maybe he was with you all the 5 years, but all the 5 years you were trying to push him on us. That is, you were treating him as a burden. Then Henry says, but we don't know for certain that he is not paid the premium. So Henry makes a clever decision. He says, why are you fighting now itself? If he had paid the premium, let us first check whether he paid or not. Later on we can scold him, curse him, whatever. Then Mrs. Slater says, Victoria, run upstairs and fetch that bunch of keys that's on your grandpa's dressing table. Now look, this Amelia brought the bureau down. Okay, but she didn't bring the keys. And the bureau, there is a drawer. There is a locker in that. Okay, and the locker is locked. As it is Abel's bureau, he locked the locker and kept the key in his room. This Amelia brought the bureau, but she didn't get the keys of the locker. So what she is telling is, she is asking Victoria to bring the keys. And where are the keys? That is in Abel's room. Okay, and Victoria says in Grandpa's room. Now Victoria is scared to go because Abel is dead. How can she go in a dead man's room? So she is a bit scared. Then Mrs. Slater says yes. Then Victoria says, I don't like to. Then Mrs. Slater, don't talk so silly. There's no one who can hurt you, she says. And you know, Amelia, if she wants someone to do something, she will make them do at any cost. We will see if he has locked the receipt up in the bureau. So she is telling him, let us just check whether he has locked the receipt in the bureau. Okay. And then as soon as she says bureau, immediately Ben's and Elizabeth's concentration go on the bureau. Then Ben says, in where? In this thing? He rises and examines it. He looks at the bureau carefully. And Mrs. Jordan says, where did you pick that up, Amelia? It's new since last I was here. So she says, it's very new. Where did you buy this? And then Mrs. Slater says, oh, Henry picked it up one day. Again she told a lie. Did Henry buy it? No, Abel bought it. Right? But she wants to make it her own. So she's telling a lie that Henry picked it up one day. Then Victoria returns very scared. She closes the door after her. Then Victoria says, Mother, Mother. Then Mrs. Slater says, what's it, child? Then Victoria says, Grandpa's getting up. Victoria says that Abel is getting up. Ben says, what? It's not possible, isn't it? We know that Abel had died. They thought that Abel had died. And then Mrs. Slater says, what do you say? Then Victoria says, Grandpa's getting up. Then Mrs. Jordan says, the child's crazy. Then Mrs. Slater says, don't talk so silly. Don't you know your grandpa is dead? Then Victoria says, no, he's getting up. I saw him. They are transfixed in amazement. Victoria clings to Mrs. Slater. Then Ben says, yes, listen. They look at the door. A slight chuckling is heard from upstairs. The door opens, revealing an old man clad means dressed in faded but gay dressing gown. He is in his stockinged feet. Although over 70, he is vigorous and well colored. His bright, malicious eyes twinkle under his heavy reddish grey eyebrows. He is obviously either the old man Abel Merriweather or else his ghost. Now look, this is what has happened. They had mistaken him to be dead, but actually he had taken the pills for the headache, and now as the sleep is over, whatever sleep is required, it's done. He got up, and they are all shocked that he is alive. They are all actually shocked. They are thinking that he is a ghost of Abel Merriweather. Okay, and then I will continue. I'll continue with the rest of the story in the next video. Please click the notification. Please click the like button, so that you will get the notification for the next videos. Yeah, I am going to post the grammar part for the coming examinations. We will revise them one by one so that you find it easy for your public examination. And as far this story is concerned, once I finish explaining this lesson line by line, I will just give you it like a story. This is in the form of a play. After I finish explaining this as in the form of a play, I will tell it as a story. So to get the further notifications, please click the bell icon, and please subscribe our channel and share it with your friends. Thank you, and see you again in the next video of Dear Departed Part 2. Thank you.